This character is desperately trying to impress Darth Vader, has anger issues, and wants more power. So I'm talking about Kylo Ren, right? No, I'm actually talking about Reva, the third sister. On today's show, we'll be digging deeper into Kylo Ren, Reva, and much more. We're covering episode 2 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. This will be a spoiler-filled show. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, you might want to listen after you've seen them. I am also doing a third show about the third episode tomorrow, so you can check that out there if you want my thoughts on that. Welcome to the Story Geek Show. I'm Jay Sherer, co-writer of Death of a Bounty Hunter and Timeslingers. The full cast audiobook of Death of a Bounty Hunter is now available via our website, on Audible, on audiobooks.com, on Downpour, on Apple Books. Basically, everywhere audiobooks are sold, you can get a copy of Death of a Bounty Hunter. Support the show by purchasing a copy. Links are in the description. Joining me on today's show, 2 excellent Disney podcasters with fantastic insights into the Walt Disney Company as a whole and the theme parks even more specifically. The OG himself, OrangeGrove55, and Dre. Gentlemen, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Jay, for having us on, man. We appreciate it. This is gonna be a good time. I've been really enjoying this this show, and I can't wait to dive into episode 2, man.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome. And the first thing I have to ask is, Dre, can you get us into the parks?
Let's get you in here real fast. Let's get Jay. We got to have you in here right there. We got to have you in there. OG, got to have you in here. And for me, all right, I'll come to. Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
Oh, and since we're getting magic bands, we'll go ahead and scan those in as well.
Nice. We're bi-coastal. I love it.
Right.
Well, thank you guys for joining me. Really quickly, as an intro to your show, you guys had me on the show. What was it, about 2 weeks ago now? Almost 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And we got a chance to talk about Bob Chapek. We had a chance to talk about streaming services. We had a chance to talk about the return of the red car trolley. A lot of fun stuff about the parks. So just really quickly, if you guys would just give a little bit of an intro of yourself and sort of what you're interested in the Disney arena.
Go ahead, Ray. You start first, sir.
Hey, my passion really lies in the parks, but now with the Disney Company, getting its, I guess, tendrils and so many other things and aspects and how it relates to the parks, you kind of have to be up on all things Disney. So my passion is really kind of my core passion is really at the parks, especially Disney parks in general. But you really have to keep up with all facets of the Disney Company, in order to know what's coming. So that's been quite an interesting journey. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I'll go ahead and take the time to get the promotional bit out of the way here. If you want to follow me, if you want to reach out to me, whatever, you can do so at VashGuy, just right there on your screen. How it's spelled right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's on the channel, OrangeGrove55 right there up top, at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me.
Oh, I love it. Definitely give Dre a follow for sure. What about you, OG? What's your passion? What are you doing all these videos you do? What are you doing them for?
Since I was a young kid, I've always had a passion for this whole kind of like creative revolution that Walt Disney started. He always was pushing the boundaries. I'm going to do the first sound cartoon. And by the time he passed, he wanted to build a city of tomorrow, right? Guy had a lot of ambition. He changed entertainment in profound ways. And that's really where I come from. I love the studio end of it. I love the parks end of it. I just love what Walt really kind of started, that the spark he kind of lit. Like it's fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating to me. And I've always been into it ever since I was a young kid, and it's been a passion of mine. So yeah, man, I'm all in. I'm all in with this stuff.
That's
I think
awesome.
It's great. And George Lucas, to kind of touch upon what we're talking about today, is kind of that same kind of mind, right? Yep. He is very much that creative visionary, that creative revolutionary. So it all ties in, I think, pretty nicely.
Yeah.
And Michael Eisner actually thought of George Lucas as kind of the modern Walt Disney. So it is kind of, it all kind of comes around. It's a very fascinating thing. How this all comes around like it does.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. OrangeGrove55 is their channel. It is awesome. Go check them out. They have some very great insights about how the Walt Disney Company works and maybe what you're getting in the parks, what you're getting on streaming, all of the various areas of the Walt Disney Company, and they do a really good job of covering it. So before we jump into episode 2, there's been a lot of talk about toxicity in the fandom, specifically around racism in the fandom and what has happened to Moses Ingram, who plays Reva. And we're going to be digging into Reva pretty deeply on this show a little bit. So I want to first address the proverbial elephant in the room that is going around all of these circles, and that is, what do we do about this? This is something that we are, all three of us are involved in this fandom. These things are happening. We're seeing them happen. The Walt Disney Company is even now responding differently than they have in the past. So, OG, why don't you kick us off? What are your thoughts on this, and what should we do about it?
It's interesting. It's a very complex situation indeed, because you can't really. This is the thing with Disney, is like they go one way and the other side gets mad. They go the other way and that other side gets mad. It's a tightrope that they're walking constantly, right? Look, here's my overall view on it. Were racist, disgusting things said to Moses Ingram? 100%. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen the messages that she received, and they were not pretty. There's a lot of ugliness out there, and we've seen it with the Star Wars fandom in the past, long before Bob Chapek, long before Bob Iger, back in the prequel days. I mean, a lot of Star Wars fans, because they have a lot of passion in them, this is something that they get fired up over. We saw it with Jake Lloyd. With the prequels, he got a lot of stuff, a lot of heat for his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker. I believe the gentleman who played Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best, he also got a lot of stuff from fandom. And even George Lucas himself said he really wanted to break away from Star Wars and sell it because of all this drama that he was getting even back then from the fandom. He even complained he can't do anything new because every time he tried to do something new, the fans would attack him. Yeah. So it's an issue. It's an issue. I know it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. I know a lot of fans don't want to look inward, but I do think the fan, there's a fan element to this that I think that as fans, we need to look at and go, okay, we're not maybe, we're not dealing with stuff as well as we should. I think a lot of fandom kind of goes into this in a very toxic way. It's okay to not like, for example, the Reva character in Kenobi, but you don't need to go at Moses. Moses didn't write the character. Moses didn't write the script. Moses is doing what she was told to do. She was told, hey, do this, say that. She's just doing her job. And to come after her as a person, I think is really weird. I think that's a weird approach. And it was equally as weird when they went after Jake Lloyd, equally as weird when they went after Ahmed Best. That's kind of where I'm at with it. But at the same time, we just came out of a very successful, in my opinion, Star Wars celebration. Yes. Very positive. We got a lot of great announcements, a lot of positive energy around Star Wars. And I got to admit, I mean, it is a little frustrating to come out of such a positive event like that and have all this energy and excitement and kind of go right into this again. Yeah. I feel like it's like 2017 all over again. It's frustrating. Yes. It's very, very frustrating. So I think that maybe it's a tough call, man. Like Lucasfilm, they addressed this issue and everything. I'm not 100% sure that they maybe should have. Maybe it would have been better to stay out of it. But again, like I said earlier on, it's that tightrope. You stay out of it, then you get crap from the other side, right? So not really sure. I'm just frustrated that we just can't watch this content and judge the content for what it is and just be fans and just kind of geek out and kind of whatever. We're constantly being thrown into this political stuff, and it's frustrating, man. I just want to like watch the show and judge the show on its own merits and not get dragged into this. And I feel like we're constantly being dragged into it. I've said it before many times on my channel. I'm really tired of the culture war. I just want to be a nerd again and just enjoy this stuff. And I feel like it's hard to even do that anymore. So that's kind of what.
That's really good. What do you think, Dre?
Yeah, I agree generally with the sentiment there. I'll disagree a little bit in saying that I think the hate that Moses was receiving, I think characterization matters. What were there vile comments directed her way? Absolutely. At what scale, though? What does that represent the majority opinion? Because I saw nobody standing alongside with those people who were calling her out in that specific way. I don't think that's a sentiment shared by the overwhelming majority of Star Wars fans out there. Now, I did see genuine critiques out there, and I saw a lot of people conflating those critiques to impart, racism or other, undesirable type motives behind them, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't see, I didn't see people standing with, some of the vile or repugnant people out there who are making those kind of comments. And honestly, it's kind of a tough thing because Moses is a new actor to this franchise, playing a character that's brand new, right? Alongside more, maybe more established actors in this franchise dealing with legacy characters that people have, familiarity with going back decades, if not, almost half a century now. So, it's kind of a tough thing. And I do have critiques on that character, as we'll maybe get in to the show on, right? I do have critiques about her about her portrayal of that character, but I kind of take the whole kind of Hayden Christensen or the kind of route where it's like I don't really blame the actor necessarily, right? It's more about the direction, the writing, how that portrayal ended up being on screen in the first place, and not so much the actor per se.
Yeah.
So I think if I look at those critiques differently than say somebody who might be calling her out for other things that that make people feel uncomfortable. But the charges of racism. I mean, look, I go back in Star Wars history. And I look at Billy D. Williams, I look at Samuel L. Jackson, I look at Lupita Nyong'o, John Boyega, Donald Glover. I look at, even recently with Carl Weathers and stuff like that. I didn't see any of the, any racism necessarily slung their way. Obviously, there might have been incidents of racism, but I didn't see that myself personally. I definitely didn't see people standing alongside those people in those, in that regard. I just think it's really weird now how we're going to call it out now. And I think the official Star Wars Twitter account and so forth, attempting to, call segments of the fan base racist. I just think they made the situation a lot worse. And I have to really question their motives on why they may have done that. To be quite frank, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, are they just trying to drum up controversy just to kind of get the show's numbers up?" I mean, it's just weird how it all went down, and I think it could have been handled differently than playing into the repugnant amongst us. And you're giving them exactly what they want when you call them out like that. And I think that was a misstep by them.
Interesting.
Dre, you bring up an interesting point. When you said that a lot of these other actors and actresses didn't receive the same heat. That's a fair point, because like even recently with Solo, right? Donald Glover. I mean, I don't know a single fan out there that was hating on Donald Glover. A lot of people loved his portrayal as Lando.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point to make in that, like, if there's this rampant kind of problem with racism in the Star Wars community, and look, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There's always going to be that element in any fandom, any culture, any society. You're always going to have those bad apples, right? Yeah. But if it was as prevalent in this particular community as it's perceived to be, you would think that Donald Glover would have received the same sort of hate. What about Rosario Dawson for Ahsoka? I don't see a lot of the, and there was another, man, I forgot her name, but the gal who played, she was in Solo.
Oh, yeah.
Fendewy Newton?
Yes. I didn't see a lot of heat for her either, and she's a woman of color as well. I just, man, and even if you go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you see a lot of heat, obviously, for Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, but then you see, characters like Wanda, Elizabeth Olsen and stuff, who are kind of universally loved. And that kind of plays to the sexism thing, right? Like, okay, well, if the fandom is sexist, then why is Wanda so loved? So I get what you're saying, Dre. I do see it does seem a little more selective. It doesn't seem necessarily like a blanket, like, okay, any person of color in Star Wars is bad. Any woman, this, that. It doesn't seem like a broad brush. It really doesn't. It does seem very selective. And I do think there's valid criticisms in regards to this character of Reva. And I have a few myself. I don't think she's as bad as a lot of people are saying, but I mean, if you have a valid criticism of the character, how she's written, that's a fair critique. But if you tweet at her and make disgusting racial comments or death threats, I'm sorry, there's no excuse for that. But I think most fans, and maybe I'm seeing it from a Pollyanna kind of view, but I think most fans are sort of coming at it from a perspective of like, they don't like the character.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdos that are going after her and her race, you know?
Yeah, there's so many other components to this that I think are so I think the number one thing is we all have to talk about a thing that we all agree with. Like the number of people who agree that it's okay to be racist is a pretty small number in the developed world, let's call it, right? Obviously there are different situations in different countries. That's another thing. There may be some of these fans that are all over the globe that are saying things. It's not just your next door neighbor who's doing this. This is a big fandom. This is global fandom. So I think that part of the problem is that I think that we have so many opinions available to us. You can go on the internet and see any opinion that you could possibly want to see. And the issue with that is that it makes it more difficult to have a nuanced conversation. Because what people are looking to do is they're looking to put everybody in a different tribe. Like, oh, you guys are in that tribe, then you must be racist. Or you're in this tribe, then you must be the good ones, right? And the problem with that kind of behavior is all it does is it serves to make more extremists on both sides. So I think that what you guys have said, which I totally agree with, is it's never okay to bully anybody. It doesn't matter if it's about race. It doesn't matter if it's about gender. It doesn't matter if it's about sexuality. It doesn't matter. Pick any topic you want. It's not okay to bully people about that. It is okay to have a nuanced discussion about the stories that are impacting the world around us. And Star Wars is a very impactful story. A lot of people gravitate towards it. A lot of people get things out of it. People of multiple types of religions. People of if you're atheist or agnostic, it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is. A lot of people get a lot out of Star Wars. And so I think that it's kind of one of those things that I would like to say that at this point, we know that toxicity exists in just about every fandom. And I would like to, at some point, start to say, look, everybody agrees. 99.99% of people agree. You do not behave this way. So let's just I think what I don't want to do is just say, anybody who has a critique, anybody who has negative feelings about something is racist. And by the way, no one said that. I'm not saying anyone said that. But I think that what it starts to do online, when we don't get these nuanced conversations where we can't sit for an hour with each other and talk about what this really looks like, I think we start to get these propaganda points, right? And I don't like that. I don't appreciate it. And as somebody, I found myself in this boat sometimes too, is when I join a conversation and I didn't like something, I'm not going to be brazen about that. I'm not going to be offensive about that if I can help it. But I am going to say, here are some of the reasons that this didn't resonate with me personally. And I do think that because we live in a society where it's so easy to reach out to a person who is involved in a creative endeavor, whether it was the writer, whether it was the actors, unfortunately, they bear the brunt of some of this stuff in a way that they shouldn't, right? Because otherwise they might not be aware of it at all. But unfortunately, we have ease of communication happening here. So I agree with you both. I think I'm getting a little bit tired of having to say racism is bad, because it's like, dude, it's so obvious that it's horrible.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's and I, as a white male, I do have to say it, right? Because just because I don't want anyone to have a perception that I would be okay with any of that. But I'm getting tired of the people who have to deal with it, having to deal with it. I'm getting tired of having to talk about it. It just seems like we should all be more on the same page. And so I'm happy that we can have longer discussion in a podcast format with friends and people that we don't agree with, and it be more nuanced, because Twitter's not helping this at all.
Oh yeah, no. Twitter is a cesspool in a lot of ways. I think, in all honesty, I think the world would be a much better place if Twitter didn't exist. I think that's the source of a lot of drama in our world right now. And like Jay, you touched upon a great point when you said the extremes on both sides.
Yeah,
we see this. Like, look, if George Lucas released the sequel, if George Lucas released the prequels today, a lot of people would say that the prequels are woke. I mean, you see a lot compared to the original films. You see a lot of culturalism in those prequels. Yes. You see Queen Amidala with very geisha kind of inspired, face paint makeup. It's very culturally inspired. The prequels much 100%. More, way more than the original films. And people nowadays, if those films were released today, would go, oh man, Star Wars is going woke. Look at all the representation. Look at they had to make her Japanese, right? They had to do this and that and the other. And then on the other side, the other side, the more fringe on the left, everything is racist. Everything is racist. And I think both sides are kind of like the fringe, and I think most people I think are kind of in the middle. Yes. I think that gray area is pretty much where the majority of people are. Yeah. And I think that to your point, Jay, Twitter is really plays to the fringes. And I think that the majority of people are really in that middle, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's totally true. And I think that I wish that we could have better conversations and more in-depth conversations with people, but it's very difficult to do in the modern world. You literally have to get on a show like this, especially, the three of us are in very different places geographically. So we have to it's harder to have meaningful conversations. But we'll go ahead and move away from this topic. I mean, obviously, don't be racist. Also, if you feel like you're getting frustrated with Disney and you feel like you're angry at Disney and you feel like this wealth of emotion that is pushing back against Disney, it helps to just classify what that is in your mind. Why do you feel that anger? And ask yourself to kind of unravel that. And it's one of the things I like to do whenever we're dealing with storytelling. I like to say storytelling is all about answering why questions. Why is the character doing this? Why is the plot changing this way? And then we can turn those questions on ourselves and ask us well, why didn't we like that? And was there a reason we didn't like it? I just want to throw out a shout out to Josh Taylor, who's been a frequent guest of mine on this show. Modern Mouse, he left a comment and said, women and people of color have to be better written and better acted because they are unfairly held to a higher standard subconsciously. And I think that statement is, I think that can be true, but again, I do feel like that's a little bit more on the fringes of things. But I also feel like I kind of want to leave this topic and get into the episode. But the last thing I will say is that the more we're told we're supposed to like something, the more there's a part of our society that goes, wait a minute, why do you keep telling me I need to like that?
Right. Yeah.
And there's a reaction to that. There's a reaction to the, wait a minute, I have the freedom to do whatever I want to. So while I do think that women and people of color take the brunt of these racist, sexist comments, I do believe that that's very, very true. Like, for example, I think actually objectively, not subjectively, objectively, you can break down Black Panther, and it is one of the best made Marvel films, right? Like in terms of saying, like, does it follow a clear first act, second act, third act, like storytelling structure? Does it have well-written characters who change in a character arc? You can take those things objectively, but when I'm told now, not me, because I love that movie, but when someone's told you must love that movie, the response is going to be, but I don't really like it that much. For whatever subjective reason exists, you're only making that person more extreme. So I do believe that people of color and women bear the brunt of this negativity. But I don't think that collectively they're held to a higher standard. I don't necessarily know that that's true. I think that they're held to a higher standard with these fringe groups who just want to find some reason. Look, most of these people live very miserable lives. And they don't know what else to do with that, right? So anyways, we'll move on. But I think we're all in very much agreement. Like, look, you can critique these things, but maybe don't critique them on Twitter. Maybe start a podcast, because you can actually externalize all of your different feelings on how those things should go.
Well, you know what they say about Twitter, though. I mean, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Well done, well done. And we'll get right into that, the Star Wars vibe now as we dig into this episode. So we are talking about episode 2 today, and episode 2 shifts from Tatooine to Daiyu, a Blade Runner-esque type of a planet.
Just about to say that.
Yeah, it's very Blade Runner-esque.
Very Blade Runner. I was like, wait a minute. I've seen this before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The mercenaries who kidnapped Leia have taken her here in order to draw Obi-Wan Kenobi to Reva, the third sister. And this episode puts Obi-Wan back in detective mode. We talked about that. I talked about that with Michael Young a couple episodes back, about how sometimes Obi-Wan will go into full detective mode as he's searching for something. And now he's searching for Leia, full detective mode, back into Obi-Wan Kenobi's life. On a scale of 1 to 10, just briefly, because we'll get into some of the things that we loved about this and some of the things that maybe didn't resonate with us. But just briefly, on a scale of 1 to 10, Dre, what did you rate this particular episode 2?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot when you initially, asked, and I really had to dig deep for it. Probably gonna be 7.5. There were some things that I really, really liked, and some things that didn't quite work. It doesn't have that, that big action set piece, right? Or those like, whoa, kind of moments. So that's kind of why it goes down a little bit on the list. But overall, I mean, production design was, just fantastic. Like really, really well done. I did like you said, Obi-Wan detective mode. That's something we haven't seen since like Attack of the Clones.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
That kind of stuff. I dig that. I kind of dig a scrappy Obi-Wan, right? One that's kind of, he really can't use his lightsaber in order to not draw attention to himself. So, he kind of holsters that and kind of goes fisticuffs. I really dig that. And, the kind of bonding moments between, kind of child Leia and Obi-Wan has been pretty sweet to watch. So, yeah, about 7.5. I think it was, decently written. It definitely has some implications for the future, and it definitely has that kind of shocking moment at the end that gets you interested in the next episode. So yeah, nice. 7.5.
7.5 from Dre. OG, what do you think? What's your scale of 1 to 10 here?
I'm gonna go a bit higher than Dre. I'm gonna go 8.5.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go 8.5, and for a couple of reasons, and we'll touch upon this in a little more depth, going forward, but. I really love the relationship that Kenobi has with little Leia. It oddly reminded me of the relationship that Kenobi had with Anakin. Like when he was going through the planet, right? And trying to keep her under wraps, and he's arguing with her. No, Leia, right? It was very reminiscent of the prequels when he's kind of going on these missions with Anakin, and Anakin was constantly bucking him and fighting him on stuff, and he's kind of arguing with him along the way. And being a pain in the what, right? It reminded me so much of that Anakin Kenobi relationship in the prequels. It was so beautiful. I love that. Okay, she was giving him all kinds of crap. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The little girl who plays her, by the way, I don't know her name. I do apologize. Phenomenal little actress. Really, really well done. She really did capture the spirit of Princess Leia perfectly. Yeah. So I absolutely love that. And then you touched upon the ending with like, that whole moment when he realizes when Reva tells him that Anakin is still alive, and you see it on Kenobi's face. The blood drains from his face. He turns white. And he's like, oh my God. That was such a powerful moment. And it was almost 100%. Like, it just gave me goosebumps the way she was kind of like, oh, you didn't know he was alive, Kenobi, taunting him. I thought that was almost like this mind game that she was playing with him, which I thought was beautifully done, and almost like kind of like horror movie vibes. Just absolutely love that finale. That was a banger. Like maybe a few minutes at the end with that. I just absolutely adored that. So yeah, I'm going to give it pretty high marks. I give it 8.5. I thought it was really well done. I really, really enjoyed this episode quite a bit.
That's cool. I'm sitting right in the middle of you guys because I'm at an 8 out of 10. And by the way, some people have liked episode 1 better. Some people have liked episode 2 better. I'm I'm an 8 out of 10 on both those episodes. They had different things going on. They were very stylistically different. And I like the fact that we have both of them. Let's get into, you talked a little bit about some of what you loved about this particular episode. So I want to hear more about that. OG, why don't you start us out? What are some of the moments that you really gravitated towards with this particular episode?
The big takeaway for me, it really brought a lot of feels when I saw the interaction between Kenobi and little Leia. Because like I said before, it really did remind me a lot of that relationship that Kenobi had with Anakin. That they were brothers, right? They were family, but like there was that tension. There was that constant bickering along the way, you know? And that's what this whole relationship that he had with little Leia kind of reminded me of. It was that constant kind of like, hey, I love you, but hey, you're a pain in my, you know what, right?
Yeah.
That was very, very cool to me. That felt like a very natural kind of like progression from the prequels. I felt like I was watching the prequels, you know, and that I'm not, look, I love the prequels, so that's not an insult at all. You know, I mean, I just felt like it was very much kind of in that same vein of the prequels. Right. Kenobi on this mission with someone who's constantly giving them problems. I love that. And I love that last few minutes with Reva and Kenobi, and she reveals Anakin's alive. And you see that reaction from Kenobi. It was visceral. It was like, Ewan McGregor, I just got to say, I mean, in all 3 episodes, I know we're not going to dive into episode 3 today, but in all 3 episodes, Ewan McGregor absolutely hits a home run. The dude is just been unleashed, and he's giving us acting that he was never really, I think, allowed to do with the prequels. Look, George Lucas, I love the man. Great visionary, but he's horrible when it comes to dialogue and things like that. and I think Ewan is actually been kind of freed from that a little bit. And you're starting to see that. He's a phenomenal actor. So just all those things kind of combined, I really, really, really did love this episode. I just felt it was like a great kind of tribute to the prequels, but it was fresh enough that it was like forward and not just totally depending on nostalgia. I loved it. I really did. 8.5.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, just to pick up on something you said there that I talked about with Megan Salinas when she was on the episode, talking about episode 1 with me. You know, George Lucas, for as much as I admire him for giving me some of my favorite fandoms, like Indiana Jones is absolute top favorite. We talked about that after the show. We spent another 20 minutes talking about Indiana Jones when I was on with you guys. So George Lucas is like a hero in terms of his ideas and how he puts those ideas onto paper and then translates those onto screen. But one of the things that Megan and I talked about is he's not really a person who should be in the director's seat. I don't think that he understands. I literally don't think he understands acting, because you'll notice that when he's the one that's directing actors, there's an awkwardness. There's a strangeness there that is just exists, where if somebody else is directing the actors, they seem to pick up on it. And so a lot of people will say, well, yeah, the dialogue's a little clunky. And I'm not saying that it isn't, but when the dialogue is even in another director's hands, it feels better, right? So like, it's just one of those things with Lucas that it is what it is. But I love the guy. So, and I think, by the way, this is one of those things when we critique. One of the things that we're trying to understand is people who love stories. We love stories. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to say, well, what made this story better than this story? What makes me resonate with this story? And if we remove our thinking caps and just say dumb things, then we say, I like this story because of some reason that's nonsensical, or I don't like this story because of some reason that's nonsensical. But when we put on our thinking caps, we can really get down to what is it that I struggled with here, and that can help us both interpret other stories better, and when it comes to telling our own and using our own creativity, we can get better at it too. So I think that's I love the stuff that you brought up. Dre, what else you got on your list?
Oh, well, I was just going to continue your thought about George Lucas. I mean, yeah, it's his direction is, you know, I mean, it's basically, you know, faster, more intense. You know, that's the extent of his direction kind of thing. And even like Harrison Ford, for example, when he would talk about it, he's like, man, you know, it's like, you know, your dialogue is written in such a way that nobody can actually act it, you know, emote it and kind of thing. So he was very, you know, critical of that whole, you know, characterization of certain characters and so forth. And
Yeah.
It was tough, but I think that's what made the OT great, was that he wasn't the end all be all. There were other people in the room kind of contributing to this great thing, and made it really what it was. Now the prequels were amazing, spectacularly visually, just like, expanding out the Star Wars universe. And to your earlier point, OG, about culture, bringing in the various cultures of all the different, planets, representing them, and all that kind of stuff. It really was fantastic. It's just the kind of human story that we all expected from Star Wars didn't quite resonate in the way that maybe it should have. And so Ian McGregor here is really allowed to act, and kind of bring out those kind of relatable human stories through Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think it's really fascinating. That moment where Ewan acts with his daughter, Esther Rose.
Oh yeah,
McGregor,
yeah.
I think is her name. That was really kind of a cool moment, and it was just kind of the slow kind of, did it really impact the plot at all? No, not really, but it was a really nice character moment that kind of showed the vulnerability of not only Obi-Wan himself, but also the situation, right? Where it's kind of like, ooh, this could get really, really dicey. That moment in particular, by the way, felt like a really kind of Blade Runner-esque, Blade Runner 2049 kind of moment. And it kind of shocked me. It was like, whoa, it's like I've dipped into another franchise, but it's featuring characters that we know and love. And I thought that was pretty cool. The other moment that, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure this is quite divided. Humor in Star Wars is definitely something that's, it's definitely controversial at times, right? But I thought the moments with Kumail Nanjiani, I believe is his name, the pseudo Jedi, right?
Yeah, right.
I thought, or the person acting like a Jedi. I thought that was great. I thought that stuff was actually pretty funny. And it was humorous. Yeah, maybe some people might find it campy or corny or whatever, but I thought it was actually kind of really nicely done. That on my subsequent rewatches always brought a smile to my face whenever that scene actually came up. So that was pretty good. We got to see the production of spice and a planet that we had never really seen before. Took us away from Tatooine, that we all kind of are familiar with, but kind of want something more. No, I thought there were some really good aspects of this episode, and I can't wait to see 3. I wish I would have seen it before the show, but wasn't able to.
Jay, what was the name of that planet that they were on in this episode? Was it Daya?
Dayu, yeah.
Dayu. Okay, I want to kind of touch upon that a little bit.
Sure.
I really, really liked this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why, because for those of you that are not aware, that Kenobi takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, before A New Hope. It's right in between the prequels and the originals, right? And I think Dayu, the planet, really kind of gave a perfect balance of both trilogies. And what I mean by that is it has elements of Coruscant, that very kind of flashy, kind of prequel thing, right?
Right.
It felt like that very, very prequel-ish, right?
Yeah.
But it was dirty, though.
Yeah.
Right. It was dirty. It wasn't spotless. It wasn't like Coruscant where everything was sparkling clean. it had that kind of grunge and grime to it, though. So it was that perfect. It kind of straddled both trilogies kind of beautifully in a lot of ways. It was very, very prequels, but very, very OT as well. I kind of love that. I was watching it and I was like, wow, man, I would really love to see Disney dive into this in the theme park world. And have kind of like this Tokyo, this galactic Tokyo kind of thing that they're going with Dayu in a theme park, an expansion of Batu or something like that. I mean, it was very cool with the neon signage all in Arabesh.
Yeah,
freaking awesome, man. It was beautiful. I loved it.
It was
like
great.
I said. I mean, it looked a lot like Blade Runner to me. I don't know if you're familiar, OG, but it definitely gave me those feels. But you're right, and it kind of symbolizes like a crumbling society, as we're the empire is kind of getting going and being established and stuff like that, you're going to see some decline over time. And I think that's what George Lucas was attempting to say, not just with the OT, but with the prequels. Like, hey, this is the era after or like during the war, right? During this conflict, during this empire, and here's what it was like before, before the dark times, right? Before the empire.
Right.
And this kind of this juxtaposition of styles comes together nicely, I think, as OG pointed out with Dayu.
Yeah.
I think it was a really good representation of that, of like, you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out as this kind of, decaying civilization, as you will, this representation of it. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. If you bring the environment into what you guys talk a lot about with theme parks, Coruscant is the magic kingdom of the Star Wars world, where Dayu is maybe more the Magic Mountain. It's kind of how we're dealing with that here, but it was really well done. By the way, I gotta give a couple shout outs. I mentioned Modern Mouse earlier. Josh Taylor is part of Modern Mouse. Please go follow him. He's awesome. And now we have Theme Park Casual. Big fan of your guys in the chat as well. Definitely go follow Theme Park Casual. We have a whole theme park family today here, which is awesome. Couple things I wanted to pick up on that you guys talked about. The first thing is, this is going to be a very controversial thing to say, but I will stand by it. I think the Kumail scenes are the funniest things I've ever seen in Star Wars. Like, in my opinion, like, so normally what we get with Star Wars is we get jokes that are a little bit more what I would call ubiquitously funny jokes. They're in almost can cross every culture. They can cross every age range. This was a little bit more nuanced, and it was a little bit more reliant upon how Kumail was going to deliver those lines. Yeah. Because he delivers those lines in one way, it's not funny. But when the lady says, "You are so strong in the Force," he goes, "I am." It's like, that's so funny, dude. Like, the way he delivers that line is so good. So huge shout out to Kumail. I think he's doing a great job here, and I'm glad that they let him be him as opposed to being like, no, Kumail, can you Star Warsify it a little bit more? They didn't ask him to do that, right? So I thought that was really cool. I like that a lot. You guys talked about the production design of Dayu. Loved it. I'm always talking about, whenever I talk about Star Wars and we're talking about like EU type of stuff, I always bring up Nar Shaddaa, the bounty hunter kind of
100%. Yes.
Yeah. And this feels like that, and I love it. Even the whole rooftop fighting scene, like that felt like a Nar Shaddaa fight scene. Loved it. I also really enjoyed in this episode thinking about the fact that later in life, Leia will send a message to Obi-Wan telling him that he's her only hope. And yet in this less mature Leia, it's like, no, I can figure this out on my own. I can do whatever I want. And that does feel very reminiscent of Leia. But what we realize is that as Leia matures, she's able to say, like, I do need other people. I do need other perspectives. And I can still be the strong character that I am. But Obi-Wan Kenobi, in this case, you're my only hope. And that's something that we weren't seeing here. And it just gave me those vibes of like, she doesn't even know that he's her only hope right now. And that was cool. I like that a lot. The Vader reveal at the end is so cool. I did think it was a little heavy-handed to put the breathing sound on, because technically that's supposed to be when he's in his mask, not necessarily when he's just breathing through his. But I will set that aside as like being just a cool thing, and I'm not worried about whether or not it's accurate or not. Also, by the way, I don't know if you guys are Breaking Bad fans, but there is a crazy wild sequel to Breaking Bad where Obi-Wan just infiltrates different meth labs in the galaxy, because that scene is hilarious.
I am a huge Breaking Bad fan, but I was late to the party, Jay. I actually, me and my fiance, we actually binged it like a year ago. I fell in love with that show. Absolutely fell in love with that show. Brilliant show. And I loved how a lot of shows overstay their welcome. They just keep milking each season until the ratings fall off. And I really love how the show creator said, "Hey, no, we're gonna cap it when it's on its high.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna leave on a high note, basically, right?
Right.
That was a smart move. No, I love Breaking Bad, and you're right. That whole thing with the totally Breaking Bad,
Totally
Walter
Breaking
White
Bad.
to a T.
Yeah, exactly. It was perfect. And then the other thing I thought was really cool was seeing the Zabrak character, the Deveronian Zabrak character. The makeup was super cool on that. We did a Star Wars fan film in 2016, and we had what was cool about it was seeing that character, because that's the other version of the Darth Maul species or race or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And we had to do the similar type makeup, and so I was really analyzing it to see how they did it. I'm like, oh, I thought our makeup artist did a fantastic job for what that looked like on screen versus what ours looked like on screen. I thought that was really cool. So let's get into now. Do you guys have a stopping point at any one time? Is there like a point where you're like, hey, I got to wrap it up by a certain time?
No, I think we're good, right?
Okay,
I think we're
cool.
okay.
I think we're good.
I just want to make sure. I want to be always careful of people's time, because this is I can talk about this stuff for hours and hours and hours. But let's go ahead and get into some of the things that maybe didn't resonate with us as much, and maybe some of the reasons why they didn't resonate with us. So, Dre, why don't you kick us off here? What are some of the things that about this particular episode that you were like, that's not really my cup of tea?
Yeah, probably the rooftop sequence was probably, questionable how it was edited, how it was actually storyboarded out and everything like that. I thought that didn't quite work, especially,
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm going to have to criticize Reva a little bit here, Okay, so some of her stunts were pretty good. Okay, she's kind of doing her dark side thing. All right, we're kind of, hopping over rooftops. Okay, kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then there's a point in which she pushes kind of some kind of stanchion or something like that, pushes it down and makes a pseudo bridge out of it. And then she like forward backflips over it. Oh, that one didn't, it wasn't quite as polished as probably it should have been, right?
Yeah.
And then, obviously they're building up tension, which is good. They're building up tension. And then when Leia falls and he catches her, which good moment, and it was foreshadowed earlier, right, where she said, "Hey, you can make me float," and that kind of thing. So you kind of knew it was going in that direction. But I thought that was all kind of well done. That the people firing onto Obi-Wan Kenobi at that moment, like, stop. And then we just smash cut to Obi-Wan's on the ground and is kind of picking her up kind of thing, and we're kind of slowing down a little bit. I thought that release of tension wasn't handled the best. I thought maybe there should have been more clips of maybe Obi-Wan dealing with that threat, making his way down, that kind of thing. It just wasn't handled the best. So the editing on that, I don't know, questionable. Maybe the way Reva confronts Kumail's character, right? For the first time, she's I mean, we've seen her now for 2 episodes, how she'll just dispatch anybody who crosses her path. Right. And here's this guy acting like a Jedi. You would have thought that he would have been cut down right there. I understand why it wasn't like that, for sure, but it was almost kind of out of character for her.
Well, she knew he wasn't force sensitive. Because she is, and she can sense that, okay, this guy's BSing me.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I just thought
kill him anyways, right?
Yeah, kill him anyways. It's like, why would you even stand in my way, you peasant? Get out of here, kind of thing. I understand why that didn't happen, right? It kind of read his mind, that kind of thing. But I thought it wasn't handled the best. It wasn't handled the most polished way. So that was just a little weird for me. But maybe you guys have better critiques than that.
Well, by the way, that reading the mind thing is another Kylo move, right? Like, we haven't really seen that from a bunch, but that's a Kylo move again, which
it's an interesting point.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. But OG, you tell me what are some of the things that maybe didn't resonate with you?
This is funny, man, because I'm gonna kind of depart from you guys a little bit. I didn't love, at least initially, when the character Kumail Nanjiani's character was introduced. Oh, here we go. We're gonna do Thor Ragnarok humor in Star Wars, and I'm not a fan of Thor Ragnarok. Unpopular opinion. I'm not into that like cornball Marvel humor.
Yeah.
And the minute his like fake Jedi character was introduced, it was like, I knew, oh my God, they're going in that direction. They're going in the Ragnarok direction. that I was like, oh man, please don't. Now I will say this. I didn't love it. His introduction. I didn't love it. I was kind of apprehensive when they introduced his character. I was kind of cringing a little bit, like, oh man, what are they going to do with this thing? And I didn't love that whole scene. But to be fair, I will say his character actually later on in the episode, when he goes and helps Kenobi get away, kind of comes full circle a little bit for me, and kind of works. And I like the concept of a guy who's pretending to be a Jedi to kind of like swindle people into money. I think that was kind of cool. Very Star Warsy. You know, we've seen a lot of like, you know, kind of like the trope of like the good guy dressing in a stormtrooper outfit to like, you know, infiltrate whatever. And I think this was kind of a clever take on that trope. Oh, I'm going to pretend to be a Jedi, make a little money, right? I thought it was very clever. The introduction to him, though, I got to admit, I felt like that was a little cringy because I was kind of apprehensive, like, oh my God, they're going to Ragnarok this thing, you know? And I'm like, no, I don't like that Marvel humor in Star Wars. But that was pretty much my chief complaint. The backflips and all that Dre mentioned didn't bother me too much with Reva, just because I feel like they have to tie it to the prequels. The prequels, look, George Lucas did what he did with the prequels, and everyone did backflips and forward flips. Even Palpatine did like,
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. OG, just don't get me wrong. I don't mind that at all. It's just that specific backflip didn't quite work out. It just looked a little weird on camera. But go ahead, OG.
Why make a bridge if you're not going to use it? Is basically what you're saying,
right? Kind of thing. It was just like, this is kind of ham-fisted in there. I like the backflips. I like the acrobatics. I like the kind of. I think they should do more of that in terms of the films and so forth that they don't really do. I mean, I played like Jedi Outcast and stuff like that, Jedi Academy, where they were doing all kinds of stuff, and I wish they would put that even more in the series. Just that specific flip, not good. So sorry, OG. Go ahead.
No, that's completely fair. That's completely fair. But that's pretty much all in terms of criticisms. That's all I had. I mean, I'm really genuinely enjoying this series a lot. There's very few that I can find. Look, I can go through Book of Boba Fett and give you a laundry list.
A lot of them.
That I was like, oh, I got a problem with this. I got a problem with that. I got a problem with this.
100%.
I can't find too much with this show. I'm really, really digging it. And my fiance, who absolutely hates Star Wars, she doesn't even like Baby Yoda because she's not into the Muppet thing. It's like too Muppety for her. She turned to me after episode 2 and was like, wow, this is a really good show. And I'm like, okay. They got something on their hands when my fiance likes it because she hates Star Wars, you know. So for me, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Very few critiques for me personally.
By the way, I'll say this real fast. I think OG, I think we're on the same page in terms of what we don't like about Book of Boba Fett. You know, like the who are they? So I call them the Cyberpunk 2077 kids, right? Now that group doesn't quite work on Tatooine. It would have worked perfectly on Daiyu.
Oh, that's a great point.
Right?
That's a great point.
I mean, so it wasn't necessarily criticism of those kids in that faction. It was just it didn't work on Tatooine. Whereas at Daiyu, I think they would have worked perfectly.
Right. No, 100%, right? You hit the nail on the head. Daiyu would have worked perfectly. Coruscant would have worked perfectly. It just felt jarring in the environment they were in. You put those same 100%. Characters on a more kind of like urban cityscape kind of planet. Oh, and they're freaking perfect.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for Book of Boba on Tatooine. It was a really odd decision. But in terms of Kenobi though, episode 2, like there isn't much I don't like. And I really did like this episode. I so far really enjoying the series. I really am.
Yeah, me too. And I think just a couple of points to make off of what you guys talked about. I will say that over the years, so let me just say that Mandalorian and Rogue One are like made for Jay. those movies are like, those movies and shows are like the kind of tone. I like the bounty hunter vibes. I'm not as much of a Jedi fan, which I know a bunch of people are. And so when I think about the humor, when I think about Kumail, because I actually have some of the same problems with Thor Ragnarok that you have, OG. It's just kind of like, it basically is making fun of itself, right? It decided to make fun of itself. And I'm not opposed to that. But what I have to do in my head, and which I've done with Star Wars, especially after Book of Boba Fett, because Boba Fett was growing up my favorite character of all time until The Mandalorian, when I went, that's actually the Boba Fett that I thought was Boba Fett. And now the new Boba Fett is actually a different guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you know what? You're going to have to go along with some of the takes that people are going to have.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
otherwise it won't be, I'll be like, I don't know if I like it. I'm uncomfortable. And so I will say that if you had asked me, you know, even 10 years ago, well, before Disney took over Star Wars, I probably would have said, yeah, Kumail just doesn't seem like it fits. Like, what is this humor? And since that time, I've actually come around to more like, we'll see what we get today. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm kind of more accepting of what it might be, but I do think it's a fair critique to say that's not the kind of humor that I expect to see in a Star Wars show. I think that's totally fair. And then I will, to your point, Dre, I will say this. The first time I watched the episode, I was really bothered by the rooftop chase scene for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons was I thought that the wire work was way too obvious.
Okay.
It was just like, wow, this is like, the wire work is obviously wires, and it's bugging me. After a second and a third watch, I was like, you know what? It doesn't bother me anymore. But I will say this. The same thing happened with the Leia chase scene in episode 1 that Megan and I talked about. For some reason, they're drawing out chase scenes. They're drawing out action scenes in a way that feels a little bit more like an old school TV show or a CW TV show, as opposed to quick cuts, quick edits, or even if you're going to go the Matrix route with wires and you're going to do super slow mo where it's all like kind of perfected into this wire movement. They're not doing that as much here, and I'm not sure if that's because they want to elongate the episodes with more action, or if it's because this is just the style that they're taking on. But I will say that does tend to take me out of it a little bit. It takes me out of the tension. It takes me out of the scene that's occurring in front of me. It takes me out of some of that stuff. And I actually have some comments on that we'll get into tomorrow about episode 3, because I don't want to spoil it for you, Dre. But there's some things that happen in episode 3 as well that I think with the action that I'm going like, they really have a different idea on how they're going to approach these action sequences, and it's not necessarily the way I would. But the only complaint, so one of the things I'll say is the only complaint I have about this show is the super smallest complaint of all time, and it's not even a complaint about how the story works or why the story works this way. I love seeing Tamora Morrison as the clone trooper when he's begging, right? I love seeing that. However, 100%. It was a little hard for me because Kenobi had pulled his hood back and his face was very clear. I'm like, you're telling me that a clone trooper would not recognize Obi-Wan Kenobi? I mean, I know the guy's supposed to be like falling on hard times, and I know that this is 10 years past the Clone Wars, but this was a general in the Republic. I mean, the whole army, this was like his deal. So that kind of surprised me. I loved the cameo. I like put Tamora Morrison in a cameo as a clone trooper. Like, I'm in. That's awesome. But that did take. I was like, wait a minute. Like, he wouldn't recognize the guy. Like, I kind of expected, because that could have set up some tension too, right? He could have been like, hey, you're the guy, and then the people around him could have been like, wait, what is he talking about? And there could have been this whole tense scene of like, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But so I thought that was a little odd. But other than that, like, I did have some complaints about the wire work, but after a couple times of watching, I'm like, you know what? It's actually pretty darn good. So yeah, I like you guys. I'm liking this series, so it's not a lot to complain about.
There really isn't. And I'll to the clone trooper, you probably should have at least had maybe a double take in there, like. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't be. They're all dead kind of thing. Maybe something like that. Exactly. And to your point about humor, I think that's one of the great things about these Star Wars shows is that it allows them to be a little bit more experimental.
Yeah,
sure.
In a way that you possibly couldn't do in the films, because I think the films come with a certain expectation, whereas these are kind of removed from it, so it allows you to kind of do some off-kilter stuff. So I'll say that, and I think this series is actually doing pretty well in regards to that, with some slight nitpicks, of course.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we got a couple more questions here. I actually have so many questions for you guys, so I might have to skip some of them as we go along. But one of them I had was there's this moment in this show where we have Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
Yeah.
who's playing one of the mercenaries that's hired by Reva, and he tells Kenobi, "You're not a Jedi. You're not a Jedi anymore, Kenobi. You're just a man."
Mhm.
And that was really interesting to me for a number of different reasons. But what do you think he means by that? What's the difference between a Jedi and a man in his mind? I'll start with you, Dre. What do you think?
Well, I kind of harkens back to, I mean, back to like kind of the prequel mindset of the Jedi, that they were kind of these mythical creatures, really. I mean, look how Anakin reacts to, seeing what he believes to be a Jedi for the first time. He has a very different take on it than we might have expected people to maybe possibly see the Jedi as, right? And I think that's kind of speaking to that these people, not only are they were removed from the Jedi a little bit, right? They're becoming mythical, but they were kind of mythical in how they may have been portrayed throughout this universe. People who weren't connected to the core, right? Who weren't connected to, some of the maybe more important stories playing out here. So they would have kind of a different take. And I think that's what Flea's character right there was talking about, right? It's just, you're just a man. You bleed like everybody else, kind of thing. I think it was kind of speaking to that. But in terms of Kenobi, yeah, I think that's. I mean, it's expressed. It's in the screenplay. You're expressing his vulnerability, and how he's kind of like, I mean, this was a guy who used to dispatch armies of droids without much thought or care, and now he's not that same person anymore. And I think that was a reflection of that, and really trying to get across to the audience that he's not that person anymore, and he's going to have to, be a little bit more creative in his strategy and his approach than maybe he would have if he was a Jedi living in the time of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's really good. What do you think, OG?
Yeah, no, I actually, I concur with what Dre said, and I would even add upon that. I think that, like, being Force sensitive, obviously there's a level of Force sensitivity that you're born with, obviously, but I do think that it's also kind of like a muscle that you have to kind of work to maintain a little bit. And I think that, like, Kenobi, it's very clearly portrayed here in the series that he sort of gave up on all of that. He's living in everyday life as that meat harvester or whatever, that job that he had in the show. So I think that while obviously it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's very much in tune with the Force, but I think there is an element here where, hey, if you don't practice, you're going to get rusty. You're going to get rusty. Like, it just because you have that in you doesn't mean that, like, you just wake, like, you can just not use it for a decade and just wake up and be like the best Jedi ever. You still have to practice and work on it and exercise it like a muscle. And I think that he's kind of referring to that a little bit here too, where, like, hey, look, you know what? You're a man now. You haven't really been, in tune with the Force for all these years, and you've gotten rusty. You've kind of been diminished into like just like this regular everyday man, And I think that's kind of what he's getting at. Like, you have to look. I mean, there's a reason why when Anakin, as a young boy, like Qui-Gon was like, we got to train him, and Kenobi's like, okay, we got to train him. You got to train them. Like, the Force thing doesn't just come like automatic. Like, it's just not just like you're born with it and you're like Anakin Skywalker immediately. You got to train. You got to work at it. And that goes the opposite way. If you don't use it for 10 years, you're going to lose a little bit of it, right? It's like anything else. So I think that's part of it too. I think that he was so much into hiding for all those years and kind of keeping and repressing that Force sensitivity and not practicing and not working on it, exercising that muscle. I think he became rusty. I think he was kind of referring to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think like you said, OG, I think he's disconnecting himself from the Force, and like some of it's born out of, hey, he has to be, right? I mean, if he gives off that's why they separated Luke and Leia, right? So that any Force reverberations wouldn't, ripple throughout the galaxy and reveal the location. Well, similarly, you can say that for Obi-Wan as well. And but I also think he's disconnecting himself from the Force in a lot of ways, not just because of that, but because he might feel maybe a little bit of sorrow and shame over how it happened and his role in it and how he could have changed things. So I think it's a little bit of that kind of duality playing out. It's actually expressed quite well.
Yeah.
And it's consistent, in that kind of muscle analogy that you give, OG. It's consistent with what we see Obi-Wan do in A New Hope, right? We don't necessarily see him at the height of his powers.
Right.
How did that occur? Well, it occurred through things like this, and I think it's a nice bridge to both versions of Obi-Wan that we see.
Yeah, it's really good. I think the other thing that I would throw out there too, and I think Dre, you definitely hinted at walking down this path too, is that this dude is fearful. This dude is not like, so normally what you would find is you'd find a Jedi that had a lot more confidence because he or she was having the Force flow through them. But for a Jedi who's not doing that to another human being, that's going to be perceived as a very fearful person, a much more relatable person than they might otherwise have seen. And the dichotomy with the Jedi on Coruscant and that Jedi Order as the arbiters of peace and justice in the universe was basically they were looked up as being on a pedestal. And this guy's basically saying, like, Kenobi, like, there's no pedestal here, man. Like, you're just the same as, you're not that much different than I am, right? Like, and I think that so you guys covered it really well. I think that there's a lot of that wrapped up in there, and it just speaks to the idolization of perceptively spiritual people, the idolization of perceptibly strong people, and when that crumbles, then you just see a human for a human, and it's like you're just a man, dude. So I think that that's really, really intriguing. Really quickly, I want to pick up on this just real quick. Theme Park Casual asked about, why does a scene like that happen where they put a clone trooper in the scene and then there's not a lot of tension surrounding that. It's just kind of like a cameo and then we move on. And he was asking, is that because the writers were under a deadline, or like why does that happen? And I think that that's a very good point. Like that happens for any number of reasons. It could have been that Tamara Morrison could only be there for one day of the shoot, and that would have been too much to kind of work out together. They might not have had the right extras around to be able to pull that scene off really well. There's a number of different things that could have happened, and oftentimes, yes, writers are under very tight deadlines. So all of those things could be part of a production process, kind of like what we talked about with George Lucas. The collaborative nature of film, whether it's on television or whether it's in the movies, means that we oftentimes get a better product than we would have gotten otherwise, right? But this is probably something that Dave Filoni would have kind of honed in a little bit more on, because Dave Filoni is like so in touch with the clone troopers and so in touch with Kenobi that he probably would have filmed that differently. But again, if Dave Filoni only does everything Star Wars, you'll miss out on some of the other elements that people are able to bring to the table. So there's any number of different reasons why that could occur.
Totally.
So let's jump into one of these other questions I got for you guys.
Sure.
We'll just touch on this really quickly if we can. Reva kidnaps a senator's daughter in order to draw Kenobi out of hiding. And so the other inquisitors are pretty pissed off about this. And they're kind of like, what do you think you're doing? So my question is, we only have 4 more episodes for you, Dre. We only have 3 more episodes to be released. I mean, is this going to have longer term implications, her kidnapping a senator's daughter, or is this just going to be kind of a throwaway plot that just gets us down the road to where we need to be with the other players? What do you think, OG? We'll start with you.
That's fascinating. It's a fascinating question. Do I think that they'll use this kind of storytelling device in future Star Wars? Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see why not. And do I think it has ramifications for the series itself? I do. I think you're sort of seeing that whole thing with Reva. She's separating herself from the other Inquisitors. And you're seeing it systematically through all these episodes where she is breaking away. She's not listening to the Grand Inquisitor. She's breaking away from that whole thing. She's becoming her own in a lot of ways. So I think that the ramifications for this, because you mentioned that the Inquisitors are not too happy about it. I think that the ramifications in this particular series are that, she's going to continue to do that, continue to buck against what the Inquisitors want and be her own woman. And she's going to pioneer her own kind of like path. Hey, look, a lot of Sith, like the thing with Sith is like, they're very selfish, right? It's all about them. So what she's portraying here, the qualities that she's kind of portraying here are very Sith-like qualities. I don't care about these other Inquisitors. I don't care about the Grand Inquisitor and all that. I'm all about me. Me, right? Yep. That's very much a Sith quality. Yeah. So they're breaking away from the whole like, oh, I'm just going to obey orders. And she's going in much more of like a really pure kind of Sith mentality. And I don't think it's going to lead her in any direction that's going to be positive. I can't imagine her story ending. Like a lot of people are kind of predicting like, oh, she'll get redeemed. I don't think so. Yeah. I really don't. I think her story is going to be very tragic because she's going down that Sith pathway. It's going to get ugly for her, I think. And that's a huge ramification for her, just in my opinion.
Well, we are seeing too. I mean, we are seeing in this Inquisitor relationship model, we are seeing why the rule of two was
just about to say that,
right?
Just like, about to say it.
When you have this kind of internal competition, it can be good, but it also can cause massive problems to any kind of collective plan that you're trying to organize and execute. So, 100%. What do you think, Dre?
I was just gonna say, it's like this is why the rule of two exists. It's like you have this internal struggle, and one's always gonna try to get up on top, and you have this kind of competitive, gamesmanship playing out here. And like OG said, I mean, she's very impulsive. She's I think she's frustrated with where she is, which is very similar to the allegories that you have so astutely pointed out, Jay, between her and Kylo and maybe even Anakin in some ways, right? Anakin's like, hey, it's holding me back kind of thing, right? I think Reva feels very much the same way. And, notice the language that she uses with the other, I think it's the third brother, I believe it is. I'm going to get what I'm owed.
Isn't it? Maybe fifth? Either way, it doesn't matter. I don't want to distract you.
Is it fifth?
Because isn't she the third sister?
She's the third sister, so he'd be the fifth brother, I think. Maybe. Is what that is?
I'm not a big Rebels guy, so I can't say exactly.
Yeah, they never really broke this down, even in Rebels. So I'm trying to figure it out here myself. But, she uses the language like, I'm going to get what I'm owed. Kind of thing, and so that kind of entitled mindset, very self-serving and so forth. So yeah, I think it will have big ramifications, not just for her, but for the Inquisitors themselves, which is quite fascinating. And yeah, it does highlight why the rule of two actually exists. Look, it's going to be. It's interesting because Bail Organa, Senator Bail Organa, is kind of caught in this tightrope, right? Where it's like, oh, I can't really call attention to her, right? But I want to protect her as well. How this will all kind of play out here, and I think this does have repercussions with how he treated Leia going forward after this incident. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out, and how it all kind of plays out. But I think it was a pretty good storytelling device to get the kids involved. It's something that we've all been looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's good. I think I agree with both of you guys on the implications that it has with the Inquisitors for sure. I doubt that we'll see anything relative to the political implications with the Senate, because that's the other side of this, right? Like even into A New Hope, the whole idea is that they were on a diplomatic mission, and that Vader is somehow impeding the workings of the Senate and the government, right? And so there's this seems, I mean, let's just face it, like Vader does not give a shit about the government. Like he doesn't care in any movie at any time. So I think Reva is basically showing that to us too. Like I'm going to be more like Vader and less like the Inquisitors. But so I think you guys captured that really well. I wish we could see the implications of what it's going to look like to the government, because there's one thing we haven't really explored in Star Wars is how that Senate interacts with the Empire in any way, shape, or form, besides just basically being a side story that's not really explored much.
Well, I think Episode 4 actually, I think, does this pretty well, where it's like, this is how the Emperor rules the kind of various systems, right? Is through this kind of corrupted government political system that we have in the Senate. And I think the reason why Darth Vader doesn't well, first of all, he doesn't like politicians for one, I don't think, but two, I think
sand. Or sand.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Or sand, exactly.
Or sand, right? Gets everywhere, right? But no, I think he knows. I mean, as the end of Revenge of the Sith actually illuminated, I think he knows the grander plan, which is they are going to be replaced by the Death Star. They're a means to an end, right? And they're only here temporarily, and it's like we're gonna rule through fear eventually. So I don't really give. Like Jay said, I don't really give a crap what these, what the diplomatic structure or the government structure of this is. It's all going to be replaced anyway.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
100%.
I will say this too: if you think that Anakin didn't like sand in his normal Jedi robes, can you imagine how much he hates sand in his Darth Vader costume? That's got to be bad, man. That is something where you don't need a lot of sand. There's a lot of places sand can get into in that costume. I'm not sure that's good. All right, so let's move on to one of the main topics I wanted to discuss here, and that was, as I watched this episode, it really occurred to me that in so many different ways, some of which we've already mentioned, Reva feels really similar to Kylo Ren. She has some of the same goals. She idolizes Vader. She uses some of the same Force tactics. So what are some of the similarities and differences between Reva, the third sister, and Kylo Ren? What do you think, Dre? Like, give me some of those similarities and differences that you see here.
Oh, she has, limited respect for authority, right? As we found out, in The Last Jedi. I think she's frustrated about where she is. Obviously, I think she idolizes Darth Vader, but wants acceptance from him, like you said in the opener here. She feels like maybe she's being held back in some ways, which we saw, Kylo there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. It's just kind of interesting because I thought the story for Kylo Ren could have been handled maybe a little bit better or maybe a little bit differently to kind of, bring that out a little bit more. So I'm excited to kind of see where this character goes, but I also see a lot of the same mistakes playing out with her character, which I think is one of the reasons why people have critiqued her character in the way that they have. And so it's a little unfortunate to see that. I'm excited about where it goes, but I think it takes on, maybe the similarities to Kylo Ren maybe are a little bit too closely knit together in the good and the bad ways. So we'll see.
What do you think, OG? What's your take?
No, there's a lot of similarities between the two characters. I see a lot of Reva in Kylo Ren and vice versa. In that, like, Reva is very much, I feel like she's very much like this angry character who is very impulsive.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want to do. And Kylo has that same kind of quality to him. I will say this, though. I feel like Kylo, in my opinion, was a little more layered, though. Like, I feel like there was a lot more kind of bubbling under the surface with Kylo Ren. I thought in my opinion, felt like he was a much more interesting character overall. I felt like after The Force Awakens, I'm like, oh, I want to know more about this guy. Like, what's going on? And mind you, Force Awakens was a 2-hour movie. Well, we've now had 3 hours of Kenobi, and I don't have that same hunger for Reva, and that could change. We still have 3 more episodes, so just to keep that in mind. But I do see the similarities. There's a lot of rage here. It's uncontrolled. The Vader fanboyism is definitely there with Reva. Like, she's all about Vader, so that's a thing. We'll see how it pans out. I do not think, though, in my opinion, I don't think, like, look, Ben Solo or Kylo Ren was eventually redeemed at the end of the sequel trilogy. I do not believe that Reva will be. I think Reva is going down a path. We only have 3 more episodes. I think she's going to kind of, like, as Tupac said, you live by the gun, you die by the gun kind of thing, right? I think that it's kind of going to be like that with her. I think she's going to sort of, this is the path she chose, and this is the path that she'll ultimately will be her undoing. Yeah, in my opinion, but the simulators are definitely there.
Yeah.
I'll say that I'll say this, to OG's point, I will agree with you. I don't think she's as nearly as a compelling as of a character as maybe Kylo Ren was.
Yeah.
Right. So I will definitely agree with you. It's just, I'm just, like I said, I'm not necessarily excited or maybe interested as maybe I was with Kylo Ren, especially early on.
Yeah.
Learning more about that character than maybe I am with Reva. And that goes beyond, by the way, just the Skywalker lineage.
Yeah.
I think Kylo Ren was a far more interesting, compelling character outside of those reasons.
Yeah.
In a way that maybe doesn't resonate in the same way as it does with Reva. And that's really unfortunate because I do think there was potential here, but I'm not necessarily hooked yet. When the Reva scenes come up, it's like, can I get back to Obi-Wan? It's kind of one of those things. And that's a hard thing, right? Because you have a legacy character that people genuinely are very, very interested in. And it's kind of hard to have this kind of, this other character kind of slotted in here like this and use it as a storytelling device in this way.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel for Moses. I absolutely feel for Moses because, like you said, Dre, she's sort of put in the middle of the story between these two legendary characters, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, and she's the new character introduced.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I feel like Lucasfilm sort of, I don't think intentionally, but they sort of set her up for failure a little bit because it's like, as a new character, I don't care who you are. I don't care what actor, actress plays this character. You're gonna fall short of like the interest of the fans comparative to like Kenobi and Vader. You just are.
Right.
And I think that was a little bit of a Lucasfilm issue where it's like, well, you're kind of setting her up for like, I feel for her. I absolutely do because like she's in the middle of this thing and like you can't compete with Vader, you can't compete with Kenobi. It's like, come on, So I understand. I understand that completely, but we'll see how it pans out. I'm rooting for her. I really want her arc to be really badass. I really want it to be satisfying. I'm absolutely rooting for her. I absolutely loved her. Moses Ingram was absolutely fantastic in The Queen's Gambit.
Yes.
She was fantastic in that movie, and she's a fantastic actress, absolutely fantastic. So I'm absolutely rooting for her. But I just feel like she was sort of set up to be the position that she's in. It's hard. It's hard to be in that position, right? These two iconic characters right in the middle of that, and you're a new character introduced.
Yeah,
it's a tough spot to be in, whether you're Moses or anybody else. That's a hard spot, man.
That's tough.
Yeah, especially because when it comes to the comparison to Kylo Ren, one of the things I talked about with Megan Salinas on yesterday's show was that it's odd to see a character have this level of vitriol when they are trying to achieve something bigger and better for themselves, and it doesn't seem to be personal. So one of the things that Megan and I were talking about was, are they going to make this personal? Did Kenobi do something to her? Did something happen to her that makes this level of internal vitriol something that she needs to like get revenge, get vengeance, get like work it out through the way that she comes back at him? So that's a little awkward because when you see Kylo Ren, one of the things that we really get with him is that we get a lot of, like, for example, we haven't necessarily seen a Reva weakness yet. So to your point, OG, how are they setting her up, especially when you've got these other characters who we are super familiar with the weaknesses of Anakin and the weaknesses of Obi-Wan and the weaknesses and the strengths of Leia. We're basically seeing a character who's, I'm tough, I'm going to do what I want to do for Vader, but we don't actually know any of the deeper reasons why. With Kylo Ren, we figured it out. It was kind of like, look, my parents have not really helped shape me very well. I feel like I'm very isolated. I feel like I'm very alone. I gravitate towards the anger that my uncle almost killed me. I gravitate towards the anger that my grandfather had. I'm now that he was such a powerful person in the Force. Is that a way for me to work through these emotions? Can I give up some of my pain by living into the Vader persona? And we don't get any of that side of Kylo Ren with Reva. We just get, I'm angry and I want to be a higher level Sith in Vader's eyes. Right. And I think that would do a lot to strengthen her character. Go ahead, OG.
Well, no, totally. I'm 100% on your page, Jay. And like there's hints of that in the beginning on the first episode with the younglings. There's a character that people think that might be Reva, but I hope in the last 3 episodes they really hammer that home.
Yes.
Maybe she was a youngling. Maybe she realized as a youngling it was Kenobi that sort of failed Anakin and set this whole thing on this downward spiral, and that's why she's angry, or something. Let's just give us something to grab onto, that this is what's motivating her. And hey, there's still 3 episodes, so there's hope there, you know.
Yeah.
But I hope they go down that route where they really kind of flesh out her character, because I think there's a lot of potential there with her character. You just got to give it a little something, you know. You got to give her that motive, and it's not too late to do that. You can definitely do that. And hey, well, I don't want to say it because episode 3, you haven't seen it yet, right? But I feel like in episode 3 they kind of a little bit with that, but not totally. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
She definitely needs more motivation, for sure. I think that's one thing that we can definitely say. We need a little bit more meat on those bones, because right now it's a little bit, you know, she's impulsive, she's frustrated. We don't quite understand why that is, and maybe what might be driving her and her decision making. You know, it's interesting because, you know, Star Wars villains, they have a lot more layers to them than, you know, might not maybe necessarily see on the onset. You know, they're kind of caricatured in their demeanor and their tone and all these kind of things, but they are actually kind of layered villains, and I think that's what is really missing from Reva, and that's what we really need from Reva, as you guys have astutely pointed out, because we don't really know the what's really driving her. And we really have limited insight into that, and I think that's definitely what it needs. You know, like Darth Vader, like obviously he's vengeful for a variety of reasons, right? And that was beautifully laid out in the prequels, I think. So that when you see in Rogue One after all this time, I mean, you know, he's letting a little bit of that out. And unfortunately, there are a couple of rebel soldiers who stand in the way of that. And it's all beautifully well done. You know, I mean, yes, while Palpatine maybe didn't have a motivation, right? You can kind of see where he's getting at and what he really wants to do. You know, I'll say for Reva, we definitely need a little bit more of that to kind of round that whole thing out.
Yeah, and OG made a good point earlier, because he said, you know, you're sandwiching this character between all of these classic characters that we've seen over and over again, and part of that problem from a person who tells stories all the time is that it's very hard to define. It's very easy to define what the Grand Inquisitor is. He's a secondary character. It's very easy to define what Kumail's character is. He's a secondary character. Sure. It's very difficult for you to say, is Reva's character a primary character?
Right.
Because you've got Vader, you've got Obi-Wan, you've got Leia. Like these are all like pretty primary characters, and then Reva feels like, so again, to OG's point, this is the creators setting up a character who maybe feels like on the press junkets, it was Hayden, Moses, and Ewan. So we're sitting here going like, okay, well, these are the 3. This is going to be all about, and I'm not saying it's not, but we don't have enough. We don't have quite enough of Reva and of her pain and of what she's faced with and of the secondary natures that are not just, I'm going to be the next Vader, right? Like, we need more than that. And I think if we got that, we would have a lot less. We would have a lot less critiques. We still have the idiots, right? Because the idiots are the idiots, and they're going to be idiots. But we'd at least be able to go down a path with that a little bit better, I think, with her character specifically.
It would also, you know, and if you made her maybe relatable in those motivations as well, now it's like, oh, now I'm with you, kind of thing. Now I can kind of understand that pain. I can kind of understand where you're going here, and kind of be with her a little bit and kind of have something to hang your hat on as viewers for this character. But right now it's just, you're standing amongst giants here that are very fleshed out, that have very you know, very long, interesting, intricate, complex backstories and motivations and things. And unfortunately she's kind of shoehorned in there, and it feels like it.
And I will say this too. I mean, I'll be completely honest, like, not even with this show in particular, but I've never been like super into the Inquisitors, even with the animated stuff. I've never found them to be like super interesting, just for me personally, you know? So it's like, maybe not necessarily like a Deborah Chow problem. I've never really, even with the animated stuff, have found these particular characters to be super fascinating to me. But I just hope that they do expand upon Reva's story in particular, because I do feel like they're setting her up to be very important to the story. And if you're going to do that, you got to flesh her out a little bit more. You know, she's a phenomenal actress, and I think that she can definitely step up to the plate for this. You know, I think she's great.
Agree.
So we'll see.
By the way, Theme Park Casual says, and we're all canceled.
Exactly. God.
What are you going to do?
This is it. This is over.
So one of the things that I'll touch on really quickly, because OG, you started to go here, because my next question, it's the last question, and then we don't get to hang out for the rest of the day, but I will be hanging out with you guys in spirit. The idea of where her character is going. What is this character's arc? And part of the problem with an arc is that you do see the weaknesses and the strengths, and they go in this arcing motion as opposed to a very clear line where the character is going, right? And OG, you said, I don't think that they're going to be able to redeem her, which they did with Ben Solo, right? And I would be shocked if they're able to redeem her. And if they are, then I'll say this very vaguely, Dre. If they are, then in episodes 4, 5, and 6, they're going to need to give us a pretty different Reva than we've seen before, because getting her through this arc, they're going to basically have to like shove the arc onto us as opposed to letting us roll the arc out. And so I think you're really right as we talk about where this character is going. I mean, the space for her to be redeemed or that kind of thought process to happen, I'm just not sure that it's actually there. So I actually hope that they make her more complex by making her darker and in more pain and taking her down that route, which is the opposite of the way they took Kylo. So, Dre, what is kind of some of your feelings about her character arc?
Well, like I said, I'm missing a chapter, so that kind of holds me back. And that, look,
go watch it, Dre. You're gonna love it, man.
I know. Well, okay, all right. Look, listen, I got some stuff going on here. I leave for California like 24 hours. Listen, I'll say this. Is there an arc to be had here? Yeah, but man, with 6 episodes, you might have had to start that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And I just don't see, like Jay's astutely point out here, I just don't see us on the path towards that in any way that that would feel maybe natural over 6 episodes. To Jay's point, you're going to have to cram it in here, and it's going to feel forced, and it will only add to her problems as a character. It really is unfortunate, because I think there was something here, it just wasn't necessarily fleshed out. And maybe that, the Theme Park Casual's earlier comment about deadlines and stuff, maybe that was a result of that. Maybe I did, from what I understand, this series faced some production problems and development problems and issues. I think back, if you go back far enough, maybe it was going to be a film, then it was drawn out, stuff like that, and you get some stuff added in there.
COVID has killed production too, and a lot of stuff. So, and then we even had Ewan McGregor at Star Wars Celebration saying, "And we want to have 7 and 8 and 9 or whatever you like." And so he said that, and all of us who were going, "Wait a minute, I thought you said it was a limited series and it's going to end at 6." Like, so who knows? I don't know if he's angling to say like, "Yeah, the fans want more, and we kind of want more too," or if he's suggesting something else. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all gets wrapped up. So OG, any last thoughts on that character arc that you want to throw out there?
No. I think that ultimately, I just want to kind of reiterate, I don't think she'll be redeemed. I think she's decided her path. I think that's kind of like the path that they've kind of committed to for her.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough episodes to really alter that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that she will ultimately get that redemption arc. I think that she's going down a Sith journey, and that will ultimately be her demise, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope so too. Any final thoughts on episode 2 before we close it out here?
One thing I'll bring up, and I just thought about it right now. The clone trooper, it's a little thing, but it was kind of a big thing. Now thinking back on it, it kind of represented like, wow, this is what the Emperor did with, these people who pretty much gained him the power that he has, right? Just cast him aside and refilled the ranks with people throughout the galaxy with, recruitment and so forth. Kind of showed that for the first time because, there was some ambiguity between, are these stormtroopers clones? Are they, what are they really? This really kind of settled that once and for all that, the clones were kind of cast out as, veterans, are a lot of times. And it was, just that little thing right there. It said a lot without having to say much at all. And so I really did like that a lot. It's a little thing, but man, oh man, does it have some pretty big implications. So I like that.
Well, that kind of harkens back to like what I love about this show is that Deborah Chow did a fantastic job at sort of straddling the prequels and the originals.
Yes.
There was a lot in here that if you're an original trilogy fan, you're going to eat it up, right? But if you're a 90s kid and you grew up in the prequels, there's a lot here that you're going to eat up. It really does perfectly straddle that line. And I think that was done in a brilliant way. I think that was really done in a brilliant way. I think there was, like I mentioned, the Dayu planet and just the way the whole energy felt. It really did feel like a bridge between both trilogies. I think Deborah Chow did a phenomenal job. All criticisms aside, all issues aside, I think overall, she did a really great job.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think we're all on that same page. This is great. It's good to see good Star Wars. So that's what we always want. And then just some couple takeaways: fantastic production design, fun characters. There is a way to have conversations about what you like and what you dislike in a constructive, informative way. I hope we've done that today.
Yep.
Shout out to Moses. She is somebody we're rooting for. This is all of any issue that we pointed out with Reva today, by the way, was not related to her. It wasn't related to her performance. Right. It's not about that. And so if you are somebody that's going to go bully, do not do that. That is horrific behavior. Don't idolize the dark side and turn to it, right? Like nobody's rooting for you. Nobody wants to see you succeed in that. Just know that you can have conversations like the one we're having, and you don't need to go bully. Just talk it out with somebody else. So fantastic conversation with these guys. Now I'm gonna let them promote their channel, but before I let them promote their channel, I want to tell you why you should go support their channel and be a part of watching their videos. I started listening to OrangeGrove55 probably over a year and a half, 2 years ago. Wow. And the reason why was because one of the things that everybody involved in this channel, including George, shout out to George. We're not leaving George out of this conversation. George is awesome too.
Disney Family 123, man.
Yes.
That's awesome.
The real cool thing about their channel is that they will take issues. This is my perspective on it. They will take issues that are being turned into propaganda, and they will break it down. Chapek is horrible. The Reedy Creek is about this. This is what Disney's facing over here. Yeah, they'll break down all of those issues, but they're going to come at it from multiple angles. They're not just going to be the Twitter war about this is horrible, this is not horrible. They're going to describe it in detail. They're going to look at it from all angles, and they do an amazing job at that. So if you're into Disney, if you're wondering about what's going on, please go give these guys a subscribe and support them. And then now let me turn it over to you guys. Tell them where to find you and why they should listen to your channel.
Well, Jay, thank you so much, brother. We appreciate that, man. We really do. We appreciate that. That was really nice. And like, yeah, we try to be as fair as possible. We try to break these things down from a kind of separate ourselves from the situation and kind of see it from an outside perspective and kind of see it from all sides. Chapek, a lot of fans want to, kind of paint him as like a one-dimensional villain. He's not. He's a person, and there's multiple angles to that story. So But we appreciate you, man, for the support and like, having us on today. It was a lot of fun. I love Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I could talk to you guys about this all day long. But you can find us on OrangeGrove55 on YouTube. We talk a lot about theme park stuff. We dive into the corporate stuff in terms of like Bob Chapek, Bob Iger, things like that. We get into like the nerd culture stuff like Star Wars and Marvel. We love it all, man. We love it all. So check us out on YouTube. And again, Jay, just want to thank you so much for being such a gracious host today and having us on. It was a lot of fun, dude.
Oh, super fun. Super fun. So go follow them. And by the way, at OrangeGrove55 on Twitter, at Vash Sky on Twitter. Go check them out. And then I don't know what George's handle is, but go follow George too.
I think it's at Disney Family Man 20. Is that it? Or is
no,
it Disney?
It's at Disney_George, I believe.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Nice.
He's right. Sorry. I do apologize. I never look at ads anymore, because
so
I just follow them, It's,
Exactly. All great stuff coming from OrangeGrove55. By the way, if you are a fan of steampunk, fantasy, Western mashups, please pick up a copy of our full cast audiobook and novel, Death of a Bounty Hunter. It's about a desperate sheriff who will do anything to save his daughter and a bounty hunter who realizes he can no longer run from the truth. Links will be in the description down below. That is it for today's show. Special thanks again to OG55 and Dre for joining me today. Definitely support them by subscribing to them on YouTube. New episodes of the Story Geek Show come out every Wednesday on YouTube and on your preferred podcast provider. Bonus shows come out throughout the week as well. As I said, I had literally released the Wednesday show. They came out with episode 3. I'm talking to these guys about the second show. I have 3 shows this week that I'm doing. So I'm taking on way too much this week, but we're doing it because we love Kenobi and we want to talk about Kenobi as much as possible. If you have a topic or a question you'd like for me to discuss, please leave me a comment or shoot me an email at hi@reclamationsociety.org. I'd love to include your questions in a future show. And I will be recording, like I said, more content all throughout the week. So you can subscribe to the Story Geek Show on our YouTube channel, which is being recorded here, or on your preferred podcast provider. Thanks for watching and or listening. See you on the next show, which will be about episode 3 of Kenobi. Plus, as soon as I can, I'll drop some notes because I'm going to be talking about Stranger Things season 4 as well. And I love Stranger Things season 4. OG, Dre, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you guys. Great insights into Kenobi. And we'll all talk to all of you guys later.